What if the person you trusted most, the one holding your hand while you brought new life into the world, uttered words that shattered your reality? For one woman, in the raw, agonizing moments of childbirth, her husband's casual dismissal, "She's just being emotional," became a chilling premonition. He thought he was calming a hysterical wife. He had no idea he was speaking to a titan of industry in the making. The very next day, while he was picking out a "World's Best Dad" mug, her face was on the cover of Forbes. This isn't a fairy tale. This is the story of how a single, callous comment ignited a revolution in one woman's life and exposed the staggering secrets hidden within her marriage. The birthing suite at St. Jude's Medical Center was a study in beige indifference. The walls, the color of weak tea, seemed to absorb the frantic energy that pulsed within them. For Isabella Martinez, the world had shrunk to the rhythmic peaks and valleys of her contractions, each one a wave threatening to pull her under. Her husband, David Chen, sat perched on the edge of a visitor's chair, his tailored suit a stark contrast to her sweat-dampened hospital gown. He looked less like a supportive partner and more like a man waiting for a delayed flight. Can you just breathe with me?" Isabella gasped, her knuckles white as she gripped the bed rail. "Like we practiced?" David looked up from his phone, a flicker of annoyance crossing his handsome features. "I am, honey. I'm right here." He took a perfunctory deep breath, the sound barely audible over the beeping of the fetal heart monitor. "No, you're not," she ground out, another contraction seizing her. "You're checking your emails. I can see the blue light on your face." "It's an important deal, Izzy," he said, his voice laced with a familiar note of condescension. "The market in Singapore is opening and I need to be on top of it. You know how crucial this quarter is for my promotion." Isabella squeezed her eyes shut, a tear of frustration and pain leaking from the corner. It wasn't just the physical agony of labor, it was the gnawing loneliness of it. For months, she had felt like a supporting character in the grand narrative of David's career. His late nights at the office, his networking dinners, his constant talk of targets and projections. It had all created a chasm between them. She had hoped the birth of their first child would bridge that gap, would be the one thing that was unequivocally theirs. "David, please," she begged, her voice cracking. "I need you. Right now. Just for a little while." He sighed, a long-suffering sound that made her stomach clench tighter than any contraction. He pocketed his phone and moved to her bedside, taking her hand in his. His touch was cool and distant. "Okay, I'm here. See, just try to relax. Just try to. The doctor said it could still be hours." But Isabella couldn't relax. The pain was a living thing clawing at her from the inside. With each surge, a primal scream built in her throat. She tried to hold it back, remembering the calm, serene births she had seen in online videos. But this was not serene. This was brutal. "It hurts so much," she whimpered, her body trembling. "I don't think I can do this." David patted her hand awkwardly. "You're being a little dramatic. Don't you think women have been doing this for centuries? My mother had 3 kids, and she never made this much of a fuss." The words, meant to be placating, landed like a slap. "Dramatic," she whispered, her voice dangerously low. "Well, yeah," he said, oblivious to the storm gathering in her eyes. "You're getting all worked up. It's not good for the baby. The nurse said to stay calm." The nurse, a kind older woman named Brenda, chose that moment to enter the room. She took in the scene. Isabella's tear-streaked face, David's stiff posture, with a practiced eye. "How are we doing, sweetie?" Brenda asked, her voice a warm balm. He thinks I'm being dramatic," Isabella said, her voice trembling with a mixture of pain and fury. Brenda shot David a look that could curdle milk. "Well, then he's never seen a woman in transition. You're doing amazing, Isabella. Your body is working hard." She then turned to David. "And you, sir, your only job right now is to be her rock. Tell her she's a warrior. Tell her she's the strongest person you know, because right now she is." David had the grace to look slightly abashed. "I'm sorry, Izzy. I don't know what to do." "Just be here," she pleaded. "Just be present." For a while he was. He held her hand, wiped her brow, and murmured encouraging words that sounded like they were lifted from a script. But as the hours dragged on, his attention began to wander again. His phone would reappear in his hand, his gaze drifting to the television in the corner of the room, which was tuned to a 24-hour news channel. The final stage of labor was a blur of excruciating pain and disorienting commands. "Push, Isabella, push," the doctor urged. She bore down with all her might, a guttural cry tearing from her lips. She was exhausted, emotionally flayed, and felt utterly alone. In a moment of reprieve, she looked at David, searching for a lifeline in his eyes. He was looking at her, but his expression was not one of awe or concern. It was pity. And then he said it, the words that would echo in her mind for years to come. He leaned over to the doctor, a conspiratorial whisper that she was clearly meant to overhear. "She's always been a bit emotional, tends to overreact." The doctor, a no-nonsense woman in her 50s named Dr. Anya Sharma, didn't even grace him with a response. Her focus was entirely on Isabella. But Isabella heard. The words cut through the haze of pain, sharp and precise. It wasn't just a dismissal of her current agony. It was a judgment on her entire being. Every time she had cried over a sad movie, every time she had been passionate in an argument, every time she had expressed a deep-seated fear or a soaring hope, it was all being filed away under the label of emotional. In that moment, something inside her shifted. A cold, hard resolve began to form in the crucible of her pain. She would show him. She would show them all. With a final ferocious push, she brought her daughter into the world. The baby's cry filled the room, a raw, powerful sound that silenced everything else. They laid the tiny, wriggling creature on her chest, and Isabella was consumed by a love so fierce it stole her breath. She looked at her daughter, so small and yet so full of life, and made a silent promise. She would never let anyone make her feel small again. David, now all smiles, and relieved cheer, leaned in to kiss her. "You did it, Izzy. She's beautiful." Isabella turned her head away. "Don't touch me," she said, her voice devoid of all emotion. He recoiled, his smile faltering. What's wrong?" She looked at him, then her eyes clear and steady. "You'll see," she said. And in that moment, he had no idea just how true those words would be. He was looking at his wife, the mother of his child, but he was also looking at a stranger, a woman he had fundamentally misunderstood, a woman who was about to turn his world upside down. The day after their daughter, whom Isabella unilaterally named Hope, was born, the hospital room was a revolving door of well-wishers. David's parents, the Chens, arrived with an ostentatious balloon bouquet and a barrage of unsolicited advice. Isabella's own mother, a quiet, gentle woman, brought a hand-knitted blanket and a thermos of chicken soup. David was in his element, the proud new father, accepting congratulations and regaling everyone with a sanitized, heroic version of the birth story. He conveniently left out his emotional comment and his preoccupation with the Singaporean market. Isabella played her part, smiling weakly and accepting the coos and compliments directed at Hope. But inside she felt a strange sense of detachment, as if she were watching a movie of her own life. The cold resolve that had taken root in the delivery room had not thawed. If anything, it had solidified into a quiet determination. That afternoon, while Hope slept in her bassinet and David was down in the cafeteria charming the nurses, Isabella's best friend, Chloe, arrived. Chloe was a whirlwind of energy and brightly colored scarves, a successful graphic designer who had been Isabella's confidant since college. "Oh, honey, you look like you just pushed a human out of your body," Chloe said, enveloping her in a gentle hug. "But a beautiful, glowing warrior goddess version of that." Isabella managed a genuine smile for the first time that day. "Thanks, Chloe. I needed that." "I brought you the essentials," Chloe said, unpacking a bag filled with gourmet chocolates, a trashy celebrity magazine, and a bottle of expensive champagne. "The champagne is for when you get home, obviously, or for now, I don't judge." Isabella laughed, a sound that felt rusty from disuse. "Maybe later. I'm still a bit wobbly." "So," Chloe said, settling into the visitor's chair and lowering her voice, "how's Captain Corporate? Did he manage to put his phone down for more than 5 minutes?" Isabella's smile faded. "Barely. He told the doctor I was being too emotional while I was in the middle of a contraction." Chloe's eyes widened in disbelief, then narrowed in fury. "He did not. Oh, I will end him. I will use my design skills to create a PowerPoint presentation detailing his every flaw and email it to his entire company." "Save your energy," Isabella said, a strange new confidence in her voice. "I have a better idea." Before Chloe could ask what she meant, David bustled back into the room, holding a copy of a financial newspaper. "You will not believe this, Izzy," he said, his voice buzzing with excitement. "The Harrison deal went through. My numbers are going to be through the roof this quarter. That promotion is in the bag." He brandished the paper like a trophy. "That's great, honey," Isabella said, her tone flat. He didn't notice. His attention was already on the television, which was tuned to a business news channel. A breaking news banner flashed across the bottom of the screen. "Tech world stunned by Aura, mysterious new AI platform that secures $500 million in Series A funding." David scoffed. Another one of these overnight success stories. Probably just some kid in a garage who got lucky. The news anchor continued, her voice filled with professional excitement. "The founder of Aura, who has remained anonymous until now, has been revealed, and it's a name no one in Silicon Valley saw coming." On the screen, a photograph appeared. It was a professionally shot headshot, one Isabella had taken a few months ago for a project she had told David was for a freelance design portfolio. She looked powerful, her expression serene but determined. Beneath the photo in bold letters was her name, Isabella Martinez. The camera then panned to a magazine cover. It was the latest issue of Forbes, and there she was again in the same power pose under the headline, "The Unseen Force, Isabella Martinez, the woman behind the revolutionary AI Aura and her $1.5 billion valuation." The room fell silent. The only sound was the gentle sucking noise Hope was making in her sleep. Chloe's jaw was on the floor. She slowly turned to Isabella, her eyes wide with a mixture of shock and dawning admiration. You are Aura." Isabella simply nodded, a small, triumphant smile playing on her lips. David stood frozen, the newspaper slipping from his grasp and fluttering to the floor. He stared at the television screen, then at his wife, then back at the screen. His face, which had been so full of self-congratulation, glee just moments before, was now a mask of utter bewilderment. What is this?" he stammered, pointing a trembling finger at the TV. "This has to be a mistake. A joke." "It's not a joke, David," Isabella said, her voice as calm and clear as a bell. "It's my company." "Your company?" He squeaked, his voice an octave higher than usual. "What company? You design websites for dentists." "I did," she corrected him gently, "in my spare time, for the past 2 years while you were working late and going on business trips. I was building Aura." She went on to explain, her voice steady and sure, how she had identified a gap in the market for a more intuitive, human-centric AI for creative professionals. How she had taught herself to code late at night after David had fallen asleep. How she had secretly assembled a small, brilliant team of female engineers who, like her, had been underestimated and overlooked by the tech industry. How she had bootstrapped the company with her freelance earnings, and then using a male pseudonym, Alex Chen, to avoid the inherent bias of the venture capital world, had pitched her idea to investors. "Alex Chen." David repeated, his voice hollow. "You used my name, a version of it," she said. "I thought it was fitting." The news anchor was now interviewing a tech analyst who was gushing about Aura's potential. "This is a game changer," the analyst said. "The platform is light years ahead of anything else on the market, and the fact that it was created by a woman of color no less, who has been completely outside the Silicon Valley echo chamber. It's a story for the ages. Isabella Martinez isn't just the future of AI. She's the future of business." David sank into the visitor's chair, his face pale. He looked at his wife, truly looked at her for the first time in years. He wasn't seeing the emotional woman he had so casually dismissed. He was seeing a stranger, a brilliant, powerful, and utterly self-possessed stranger who had built a billion-dollar company from their spare bedroom. And he, the man who was so proud of his potential promotion, suddenly felt very, very small. The chasm between them had not been bridged by the birth of their daughter. It had been revealed for what it was, a vast, gaping canyon, and he was on the wrong side of it. The revelation of Isabella's secret life as a tech mogul sent shockwaves not just through the business world, but through the sterile beige hospital room that had become the unlikely epicenter of their domestic drama. For the next few hours, Isabella's phone, which she had kept on silent, buzzed incessantly. Emails, texts, and social media notifications poured in a digital tsunami of congratulations, interview requests, and investment offers. Chloe, now fully recovered from her shock, had gleefully taken on the role of temporary gatekeeper, fielding calls and marveling at the names that flashed across the screen. "Mark Cuban's assistant just called," she whispered to Isabella at one point, her eyes like saucers. "And I think I just hung up on Sheryl Sandberg." David, in stark contrast, was a study in stunned silence. He had retreated to a corner of the room, his face a pallid mask of confusion and what looked suspiciously like fear. He kept glancing at Isabella, then at the sleeping baby, as if trying to reconcile the two wildly different versions of the woman he thought he knew. The doting new mother in the hospital gown, and the ruthless CEO on the cover of Forbes. How could they be the same person? His own world, which had seemed so solid and impressive just that morning, now felt flimsy and insignificant. His hard-won deal, his imminent promotion. They were like children's toys compared to the era she had built in secret. That evening, after the last of the visitors had departed and a fragile quiet had settled over the room, The tension between them was a palpable thing. Isabella was breastfeeding hope, her expression serene, as she gazed at her daughter. David, unable to bear the silence any longer, finally spoke. "Why didn't you tell me, Izzy?" he asked, his voice barely a whisper. "Why did you hide all of this from me?" Isabella looked up, her eyes unreadable. "Would you have believed me?" she asked softly. "Or would you have told me I was being emotional, that I was overreacting?" The words, a direct echo of his own callous dismissal, hit their mark. David flinched as if struck. "That's not fair," he mumbled. "Isn't it?" She countered, her voice still quiet, but with an edge of steel. "For the past 5 years, David, my dreams have been a footnote to yours. My ambitions were something to be managed, to be fitted in around your schedule. When I wanted to take a course in advanced coding, you said we couldn't afford it, that my freelance work was just a hobby. The week after, you bought a new set of golf clubs for your networking with clients." She adjusted the baby in her arms, her movements fluid and confident. "I learned very quickly that if I wanted to achieve anything, I had to do it on my own. So I did." David ran a hand through his perfectly styled hair, messing it up for the first time that day. I had no idea you felt that way. I always supported you." "You supported the version of me that you were comfortable with," she said, "the one who made your favorite dinner, who listened to you complain about your boss, who organized our social life. You didn't want a partner, David. You wanted a support system, an unpaid intern for your life." The raw, unvarnished truth of her words hung in the air between them. David opened his mouth to protest, to defend himself, but no words came. Because deep down he knew she was right. He had taken her for granted, had relegated her to the background of his own ambition. He was about to apologize, to beg for a chance to understand, when a nurse knocked on the door and entered with a small official-looking envelope. "A courier just delivered this for you, Mr. Chen," she said, handing it to him. David took it, a puzzled frown on his face. It wasn't from his office. The return address was a prestigious law firm in the city center. With trembling fingers he tore it open. Inside was a single sheet of paper. It was a formal notice, a letter of termination. "What is it?" Isabella asked, noticing the color drain from his face. He read the letter aloud, his voice a strangled croak. "Dear Mr. Chen, this letter is to inform you that your employment with Sterling and Finch is terminated effective immediately. This decision is based on a gross violation of the company's code of conduct, specifically Clause 12.b regarding insider trading and corporate espionage." He looked up at Isabella, his eyes wide with panic. "Insider trading, corporate espionage. This is insane. It's a mistake. Is it?" "David." Isabella's voice was quiet, but it cut through his panic like a surgeon's scalpel. "Of course it is," he insisted, his voice rising in desperation. "I would never, I don't even know how—" "Let me jog your memory," she said, her gaze unwavering. "A few months ago, you came home very excited about a new client, a tech startup called Innovatech. You said they were developing a revolutionary new AI platform." David's face went white. "How? How did you know about that?" "Because Innovatech was my primary competitor," Isabella said calmly. "And I have it on very good authority that you accessed their confidential data room using your senior credentials at Sterling and Finch, and then you sold that information to their biggest rival." The accusation hung in the air, heavy and suffocating. David stared at her, his mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water. He had been so careful, had used encrypted channels, had covered his tracks meticulously. How could she possibly know? The Harrison deal. She continued, piecing it all together for him. The deal you were so proud of this morning, the one that was supposed to get you your promotion. It was with the company that bought Innovatech's stolen data, the data you provided. The final piece of the puzzle clicked into place. His big win was built on a foundation of lies and deceit. And somehow his wife, the woman he thought was designing websites for dentists, knew all about it. But how? He whispered, the fight draining out of him. You're not the only one with connections, David. Isabella said, a hint of a sad smile on her lips. Aura isn't just a platform for creatives. It's also one of the most sophisticated data analysis tools in the world. It can find patterns and connections that no human could ever see. It took Aura less than a second to trace the data breach at Innovatech back to an IP address. Your IP address, at your office. She had known. For weeks she had known about his betrayal. She had watched him celebrate his success, knowing it was all a sham. She had let him walk right into the trap he had set for himself. The irony was staggering. He had dismissed her as too emotional, while he was the one engaging in criminal activity, driven by a desperate ego-fueled need to get ahead. He had accused her of being dramatic, while his own life was a carefully constructed house of cards about to come crashing down. He looked at his wife, truly seeing her for the first time. The quiet, unassuming woman he had married was gone. In her place was a formidable opponent, a queen in a high-stakes chess game he didn't even know he was playing, and he had just been checkmated. He sank to his knees, the letter of termination crumpling in his fist. He had not only lost his job and his reputation, he had lost his wife. And he had no one to blame but himself. The woman he had underestimated had not just surpassed him, she had exposed him. The drama in the delivery room was just the opening act. The real story was just beginning. The days that followed were a surreal blur of jarring contrasts. While Isabella's star ascended at a meteoric rate, David's world imploded with brutal efficiency. The news of his termination for corporate espionage, coupled with the bombshell revelation of his wife's identity, became a salacious B story in the business journals. He was a modern-day Icarus, flying too close to a sun he didn't even know existed. His name, once a mark of rising success at Sterling and Finch, was now whispered in tones of pity and scorn. He checked out of the hospital suite with Isabella and Hope, a ghost of the man who had checked in. The drive home was silent, the air in their luxury sedan thick with unspoken accusations and the quiet hum of $1 billion valuation. Their beautiful minimalist home, once a symbol of their shared success, now felt like her territory. The sleek furniture, the curated art, the panoramic city views, it all seemed to belong to her, to the formidable CEO of Aura, not to the emotional wife he had married. Isabella, meanwhile, was navigating the treacherous waters of her newfound fame with a preternatural calm. She set up a temporary command center in their home office, the same room where she had secretly built her empire. Chloe, who had quit her job with a flourish of triumphant emails, was now her de facto chief of staff, managing a relentless schedule of calls with lawyers, investors, and public relations firms. "The New York Times wants a feature," Chloe would announce, sticking her head into the nursery, where Isabella was changing Hope's diaper. "And Anderson Cooper's people are online, too. They want you for a primetime special." Isabella would simply nod her focus on the tiny human in front of her. "Tell them my daughter's nap schedule is non-negotiable." This juxtaposition was not lost on David. He would watch from the doorway as she seamlessly transitioned from a tender, cooing mother to a sharp, decisive executive negotiating the terms of a multi-million-dollar partnership with a Japanese tech giant while gently rocking Hope's bassinet with her foot. He saw a strength and a multifaceted brilliance in her that he had been completely blind to. He had seen her only through the narrow lens of his own needs and expectations. His days were a bleak landscape of shame and inactivity. He spent hours aimlessly scrolling through the news on his tablet, each article about Isabella's genius and Aura's disruptive technology, a fresh stab to his wounded pride. His former colleagues, the ones who had clapped him on the back and called him a rainmaker, now crossed the street to avoid him. The networking buddies he had played golf with were suddenly unavailable for a drink. He was a pariah, and the loneliness was crushing. In a desperate attempt to feel useful, he tried to take over the domestic duties. He made coffee, which was too weak. He attempted to cook dinner and nearly set off the smoke alarm. He offered to watch Hope, but his fumbling, uncertain movements only made the baby cry, and Isabella would have to swoop in and expertly soothe her. He was as incompetent at home as he now was in his professional life. One evening, about a week after they had returned from the hospital, David found Isabella in the nursery, softly singing a lullaby to Hope. He stood in the doorway, a silent, pathetic figure. "I'm sorry, Izzy," he said the words, feeling woefully inadequate. "For everything. For what I said in the hospital, for the other thing." Isabella didn't turn around. "Which other thing are you referring to, David?" she asked, her voice soft but pointed. "The insider trading or the years of casual neglect?" He flinched. "Both. All of it. I was a fool. I was so wrapped up in my own ambition I couldn't see you. I didn't see you." "No, you didn't," she agreed, finally turning to face him. Hope was asleep on her shoulder, her tiny face a picture of pure innocence. "You saw what you wanted to see. A pretty, agreeable wife who would make your life comfortable while you pursued your important career." "I can change," he pleaded, taking a tentative step into the room. "Let me show you. I'll support you. I'll be a stay-at-home dad. I'll be your unpaid intern. Whatever you want." A sad smile touched Isabella's lips. "It's not that simple, David. This isn't about you taking on a new role in my life. It's about the fact that the entire foundation of our marriage was a lie. You didn't respect me. And trust, once that's gone, it's almost impossible to get back." Her words were not angry, but they were devastatingly final. He felt a chasm opening up between them, far wider than the one he had perceived before. Just then, Isabella's phone, which she had left on the changing table, began to buzz. Chloe's name flashed on the screen. Isabella sighed and answered it. "What is it, Chloe? I'm putting the baby down." Chloe's voice on the other end was frantic. "You need to see this. Turn on the news. Any channel." Isabella's brow furrowed in concern. She picked up the baby monitor and walked into the living room, David trailing behind her like a lost puppy. She flicked on the large-screen TV. A news anchor was reporting live, a graphic of a man's face displayed prominently next to her. The man was handsome, with a charismatic smile and piercing blue eyes. The name beneath the picture was Liam O'Connell. "Breaking news in the tech world tonight," the anchor said. "Liam O'Connell, the disgraced founder of Innovatech, the company at the center of the recent corporate espionage scandal, has just released a statement. O'Connell, who was once Isabella Martinez's mentor, and according to sources, her former fiancé, is claiming that he is the true architect of the Aura platform. He alleges that Martinez stole his intellectual property after their acrimonious breakup 5 years ago." The camera cut to a pre-recorded video of Liam looking earnest and wronged. "Aura was my brainchild," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "Isabella was my protégé. I trusted her, and she betrayed me. She took my work, my dream, and passed it off as her own. I have the proof. I have the original code, and I will fight to get my company back." David stared at the screen, a new wave of shock washing over him. Former fiancé, mentor. This was a part of Isabella's past he knew absolutely nothing about. He turned to look at his wife. Her face, which had been so composed and in control, was now ashen. Her hand, which held the remote, was trembling slightly. The formidable CEO, the unshakable titan of industry, looked for the first time vulnerable. The man on the screen, Liam O'Connell, was not just a rival. He was a ghost from her past, a ghost David never knew existed, and he had just declared war. The battle for Aura was no longer just about business. It was deeply, dangerously personal. And David, the disgraced husband, was caught in the crossfire, a powerless spectator to a drama that had started long before he had ever entered the picture. The accusation from Liam O'Connell landed like a grenade in the already chaotic landscape of Isabella's new life. The media, which had been celebrating her as a feminist icon and a business visionary, now pivoted with dizzying speed. The narrative shifted from a story of female empowerment to a salacious tale of love betrayal and stolen genius. "Tech's new queen, or a cunning thief," blared one headline. "The battle of the exes who really created Aura," screamed another. Liam, a master of public relations, played his part to perfection. He gave tearful interviews, painting himself as the brilliant, trusting mentor, whose heart and life's work had been stolen by a manipulative femme fatale. He produced reams of evidence, early-stage code snippets, concept documents, and emails from 5 years prior that, taken out of context, seemed to support his claim. He was charismatic, believable, and he had a story the media couldn't resist. Aura's investors grew nervous. The company's valuation, which had been soaring, began to wobble. The board of directors, who had been singing Isabella's praises, now called for emergency meetings, their voices laced with concern. The fairy tale was over. Now the witch hunt had begun. Inside the minimalist fortress of their home, the atmosphere grew even more strained. Isabella became a woman possessed. She worked around the clock. Her days a frantic blur of legal consultations, board meetings, and strategy sessions with her PR team. She barely ate, and the soft maternal glow she'd had in the days after Hope's birth was replaced by a hard, brittle exhaustion. David watched her, his feelings a tangled mess of guilt, awe, and a strange, newfound protectiveness. He saw the toll Liam's accusations were taking on her, and for the first time, his concern was not for himself, but for her. He remembered the name Liam O'Connell from snippets of conversation early in their relationship. Isabella had mentioned him once or twice, vaguely referring to him as a former boss from her first job in tech. She had never mentioned they were engaged. The omission now felt like a gaping wound, a testament to the secrets they had both kept. One night, David found her in the Home Office at 3 a.m., surrounded by stacks of legal documents, her face illuminated by the cold light of her laptop screen. Her shoulders were slumped, and for a moment she looked utterly defeated. "You should sleep," he said softly from the doorway. She jumped, startled. "I can't. They're filing an injunction tomorrow. They want to freeze all of Aura's assets." He walked into the room, and for the first time in what felt like an eternity, he didn't feel like an intruder. He pulled up a chair and sat opposite her. "Talk to me, Izzy," he said. "Tell me about him. Tell me the truth." Isabella stared at him, her eyes searching his for a long moment. Then she let out a long, shuddering breath and began to speak. "Liam was my first real boss," she began, her voice low. I was young, just out of college, full of ideas. He was brilliant, charismatic, the golden boy of the local tech scene. He took me under his wing. We started working on a project together, an early concept for an intuitive AI. It was collaborative. My ideas, his coding expertise. She paused, a shadow passing over her face. He was also incredibly charming. He made me feel like I was the center of the universe. We fell in love. We got engaged. I thought he was my future. What happened? David asked gently. The closer we got to a viable product, the more he changed, she said. He started taking credit for my ideas in meetings. He would present my concepts as his own. When I confronted him, he would laugh it off, tell me I was being sensitive. He'd say, "We're a team, baby. What's yours is mine." But it never seemed to work the other way around. The word sensitive hung in the air, a bitter echo of David's own words in the delivery room. He felt a fresh wave of shame. The final straw, Isabella continued, was when he pitched our project to a major VC firm. He put his name on the patent application as the sole inventor. My name was nowhere on it. When I found out, I was devastated. I told him it was over. He didn't take it well. He threatened to ruin me to make sure I never worked in the tech industry again. He said he would paint me as an unstable, emotional woman who couldn't handle the pressure. She looked at David, her eyes blazing with a long-suppressed anger. So I disappeared. I left the tech world. I started my own small freelance business, and I met you. I never wanted to look back. I buried that part of my life because I was ashamed. I let him make me feel small. And Aura? David asked. Aura is all mine, she said with fierce pride. It's built on a completely different framework. The core concept of a human-centric AI might be similar, but the architecture, the code, the entire execution is mine. The snippets he's showing the media, they're from our old project. They're a dead end. They're worthless. But he's banking on the fact that no one will dig deep enough to see that. He's not trying to win in a court of law. He's trying to win in the court of public opinion. He wants to destroy my reputation, just like he promised he would. David listened, horrified and enlightened. He finally understood the depth of her past trauma, the reason for her secrecy. It wasn't about deceiving him. It was about protecting herself. And he, with his own casual dismissiveness, had unwittingly become a part of the pattern of men who had underestimated and belittled her. A new resolve hardened within him. He was not a tech genius. He was not a PR expert. He was a disgraced former executive with a tarnished reputation. But he still had a brain. And he knew the world he came from. The cutthroat, ego-driven world of corporate finance. A world not so different from Liam's. He's a bully, is he? David said, his voice firm. And I know how to deal with bullies. They have weaknesses. They're arrogant. They make mistakes. He leaned forward, his eyes intense. You're fighting him on your turf. Technology and the law. You need to fight him on his. Public perception. Corporate warfare. For the first time since the news broke, Isabella looked at him not as a failed husband, but as a potential ally. What are you suggesting? I still have a few contacts, David said, a glimmer of his old confidence returning. People who owe me favors. People who hate Liam O'Connell more than you do. He burned a lot of bridges on his way up. Let me make some calls. Let me dig. You focus on the legal battle. Let me handle the back channels. Isabella hesitated for a moment. Could she trust? Asked him. Could she rely on the man who had so recently betrayed her? But as she looked at him, she saw a different man. She saw the man who had been humbled, the man who was finally seeing her for who she was. and she saw a flicker of the sharp, strategic mind that had, however, misguidedly gotten him to the top of his own field. "Okay," she said, giving him a single decisive nod. "Let's see what you can do." It was a fragile truce, a temporary alliance born of desperation. But in the dead of night in the war room of her besieged company, it was a start. David, the disgraced husband, had just been given a chance to redeem himself. And as he picked up his phone, he knew he wasn't just fighting for her company. He was fighting for his marriage, for his family, and for the last tattered remnants of his own honor. The battle for Aura had just gained a new, unexpected soldier. While Isabella and her legal team prepared for an all-out war in the courtroom, David launched a covert operation from the confines of their home. He transformed from a moping unemployed husband into a man on a mission. He worked his phone like a weapon, calling in old markers, leveraging long-forgotten connections, and piecing together a mosaic of Liam O'Connell's less-than-stellar history. He discovered a pattern of behavior, a string of former partners and junior employees, mostly women, who had left Liam's companies under mysterious circumstances, many with non-disclosure agreements and quiet settlements. His key informant was a disgruntled former CFO of Innovatech, a man named Marcus Thorne, whom Liam had unceremoniously fired a year prior. Thorne, bitter and eager for revenge, was a treasure trove of information. "Liam's a narcissist," Thorne told David over an encrypted call. "He's brilliant, I'll give him that. But he's a black hole of credit. He sucks it all in, and no light escapes. He leaves a trail of bodies behind him. Check out a woman named Dr. Alana Finch. She was his lead researcher before Isabella. She left the country after working with him. Last I heard, she was teaching at a university in New Zealand." That was the lead David needed. He spent 2 days trying to track her down, finally finding an email address for a Dr. Alana Finch at the University of Auckland. He drafted a careful, respectful email explaining the situation and appealing to her sense of justice. He didn't know if she would reply, but it was a shot in the dark he had to take. Meanwhile, the pressure on Isabella was immense. Liam's injunction was granted temporarily, freezing Aura's operational accounts. The move was a strategic blow designed to cripple the company and sow panic among its employees and investors. The media circus was relentless. Liam was everywhere, the charming, wronged victim, while Isabella was portrayed as the cold, calculating ice queen. The climax arrived during a live, televised town hall event hosted by a major news network. It was billed as a debate, a chance for both sides to present their case to the public. Isabella, against the advice of her lawyers, had agreed to participate. "I'm not going to hide," she had told them. "I'm not going to let him control the narrative." The stage was set. Isabella sat on one side, poised and steely. Liam sat on the other, his expression a carefully calibrated mix of sadness and resolve. The moderator began, and for the first 30 minutes Liam was winning. He spoke eloquently of his vision, of his passion for the project, and of his devastation at being betrayed. He presented his cherry-picked evidence with the flair of a seasoned showman. Isabella's responses were technical, precise, and factual. She spoke of code architecture and development timelines. But in the arena of public opinion, facts were a poor match for a compelling emotional story. The live audience polls showed a clear swing in Liam's favor. David watched from the green room, his heart pounding. He had been feeding information to Isabella's PR team, but Liam was a formidable opponent. Just as he was starting to lose hope, his phone buzzed. It was an email. The sender was Alana Finch. The email was short, but it was explosive. "Mr. Chen," it read, "I will not be silenced any longer. Liam O'Connell is a fraud. He did to me exactly what he is doing to your wife. I am boarding a flight to Los Angeles now. I have a recording, and I have the original time-stamped server logs from our project. He didn't just steal my work. He tried to pass it off as his own to secure his first round of funding. I am sending the recording to you now." Attached was an audio file. David's hands trembled as he downloaded it. He quickly forwarded the email and the file to the lead producer of the town hall, a woman he had managed to connect with earlier, with a simple, urgent message: "You need to see this. A surprise witness is on her way. Play the tape." Back on stage, the moderator was moving in for the kill. "Ms. Martinez," she said, her tone sympathetic but firm, "Mr. O'Connell has presented a compelling case. He has emails, documents. What do you have other than your word?" Isabella opened her mouth to speak, but before she could, the moderator held up a hand. "We have just received some breaking information in this case. A new piece of evidence has just been submitted." A confused murmur went through the audience. Liam's confident smile faltered for a fraction of a second. "We have an audio recording," the moderator announced. "Mr. O'Connell, perhaps you can shed some light on it." And then a voice filled the studio. It was Liam's voice, but it was not the calm, measured tone he had been using all evening. It was a voice from 5 years ago, dripping with venom and rage. "You think you can challenge me?" Liam's recorded voice sneered. The audio quality was slightly muffled, but the words were crystal clear. "You're nothing without me, Alana. You're just an emotional, hysterical woman. I will bury you. I will take your work. I'll put my name on it, and I will make sure everyone in this industry knows you're unstable. Who are they going to believe? Me, the golden boy? Or you, the hysterical woman who couldn't take the pressure?" The silence in the studio was absolute. Every eye was on Liam. The color had drained from his face. The charismatic mask had shattered, revealing the ugly, snarling bully underneath. It was the exact same pattern of abuse, the same dismissive, misogynistic language he had used with Alana and that Isabella had described. The moderator's voice was icy. "Mr. O'Connell. That was your voice, was it not? And the woman you were speaking to? That was Dr. Alana Finch, your former lead researcher, was it not?" Liam was speechless. He looked like a cornered animal. He opened his mouth, but no sound came out. Isabella looked directly at him, her expression not triumphant, but filled with a cold, righteous anger. "This is his pattern," she said, her voice ringing with clarity and power. "He finds talented women, exploits their work, and when they stand up for themselves, he tries to destroy them by calling them emotional or unstable. He didn't just steal from me. He has a history of it. The only difference is, this time he picked the wrong woman." The audience, which had been so sympathetic to Liam just moments before, erupted in a wave of applause. The spell was broken. The truth in all its ugly detail was out. In the green room, David watched, tears welling in his eyes. He had done it. He had given her the ammunition she needed. He had helped her win. On stage, Isabella Martinez was no longer on the defensive. She was in complete command. She had not only saved her company, she had exposed a predator and given a voice to his other victims. She was not just the CEO of Aura. She was a symbol of something far more powerful. She was a woman who had been underestimated, dismissed and betrayed, and had risen from the ashes stronger and more brilliant than ever before. The queen had not been dethroned. She had just solidified her reign. The fallout from the town hall was immediate and spectacular. Liam O'Connell's career imploded overnight. His investors pulled out his board, resigned, and he became a pariah in the industry he had once dominated. Dr. Alana Finch, who arrived mid-scandal to a throng of reporters, became an overnight hero, and her testimony, along with the server logs she provided, sealed Liam's fate. The injunction on Aura's assets was lifted, and the lawsuit was dropped. The story of Liam's downfall and Isabella's triumph became a legend in the tech world, a cautionary tale about the perils of hubris and the power of truth. Aura's valuation skyrocketed, surpassing even the most optimistic projections. Isabella, now free from the cloud of suspicion, was hailed not just as a genius, but as a courageous leader who had faced down a powerful bully and won. She used her newfound platform to launch a foundation dedicated to supporting women in STEM, ensuring that others would not have to face the same barriers she had. But amidst the public victory, a private reckoning was still to come. Isabella and David returned home from the town hall in silence. The adrenaline had faded, leaving a quiet, contemplative exhaustion in its wake. The war was over, but the landscape of their marriage was still a battlefield. They put a sleeping hope to bed, their movements around each other, careful and deliberate. Then they sat opposite each other in the living room, the city lights twinkling below them. "Thank you," Isabella said, her voice soft but sincere. "I couldn't have done it without you. You saved me." David shook his head. "You saved yourself, Izzy. I opened a door. You were the one who had the courage to walk through it." He looked down at his hands. "I know this doesn't change anything. Not really. What I did, how I treated you, it's still there." "No, it doesn't erase it," she agreed. "But it does show me something. It shows me that you're capable of seeing me, truly seeing me. And it shows me that you're willing to fight for me, not just for yourself." She looked at him, her gaze clear and searching. "The man I married, the one who checked his emails while I was in labor, the one who dismissed my pain. I don't know if I can ever get back to him. I don't think I want to." David's heart sank. "I understand. But," she continued, a flicker of something new in her eyes, "the man who worked tirelessly to find Alana Finch, the man who used his skills to defend my honor, the man who put his own ego aside to help me, that's a man I could get to know. That's a man I could, potentially, build a new future with." It wasn't a promise of forgiveness. It wasn't a guarantee of reconciliation. But it was a possibility, a fragile, tentative opening. "Our old marriage is over, David," she said, the finality of it hanging in the air. It was built on a flawed foundation, on secrets and disrespect. If we're going to have any chance, we have to tear it all down and start again. From scratch, with honesty, with respect, and with a clear understanding of who we both are. She stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the sprawling city below. "I am the CEO of a billion-dollar company. I am a mother. I am a woman who will never again allow herself to be made small. Can you love that woman? Can you be a true partner to her?" David stood up and walked to stand beside her, not touching, but close enough that she could feel his warmth. He looked at her reflection in the glass, the powerful, brilliant and complex woman who was his wife, the woman he had almost lost. "Yes," he said, his voice thick with emotion, but steady with a newfound certainty. "I can, and I will spend the rest of my life proving it to you if you'll let me." Isabella didn't reply immediately. She just continued to stare out at the city lights, a city of infinite possibilities. The future was unwritten. The trust was not yet rebuilt. The healing was far from complete. But for the first time since the cold, sterile moments of the delivery room, there was a glimmer of something that had been absent for far too long. There was hope. A new architecture for their lives was waiting to be designed, and this time they would build it together, brick by honest brick. So what do you think? Was David's betrayal unforgivable, or does his fight for redemption earn him a second chance? The story of Isabella and David is a raw look at what happens when the person you love most fails to see who you truly are. It's a reminder that sometimes our greatest challenges are not in the boardroom, but in our own homes. If this story of heartbreak, betrayal, and ultimate triumph resonated with you, if it made you question, cheer, or even cry, then please give this video a like. Share it with someone who needs to be reminded of their own strength. And most importantly, subscribe to the channel for more real-life stories that will keep you on the edge of your seat. Let us know in the comments below, Team Isabella or Team Second Chance. We can't wait to hear from you.